Hello and welcome to Cooking the Books with Heather. On this episode, we're going to be making a recipe my husband has been wanting me to make probably for almost a year now because he saw it after peach season last year. And so we had to wait until peach season this year for us to make it. But we're going to be making jalapeno peach chicken from Deep Run Roots, Vivian Howard's cookbook. And the first step for this is to make a jalapeno peach glaze. It makes a lot more than this recipe will need, but I'm planning on freezing the rest of it, whatever's left over in single serving sort of containers, so we can have this another time. But so we're gonna start with our food processor. And I have peaches that have been sort of roughly chopped. Some of them were a little past their prime, but that is fine for this recipe. We're gonna be cooking them and yeah, it'll be fine. I have a lot of jalapenos, an awful lot of jalapenos. I hope I can make all of this fit. Eventually it'll go down. And we have some ginger, which was peeled and roughly chopped and really hard to measure, but whatever. And we have a little bit of onion. Actually, I was pretty surprised about the small amount of onion in this, but that's all that's going in here right now. And we're going to pulse this until it is shredded nicely, but not fully pureed. So we're not looking for a smooth consistency, just sort of shredded. So I have no idea. I'm just gonna pulse. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna check it. I still see some pieces of peach down at the bottom, but everything else looks pretty good. All right, I'm just gonna give it a couple more pulses, but otherwise I think we're just about there. I've stopped seeing the like sort of larger pieces of peach going around, and so I think we're done with this step. And now we have to cook it. So I will meet you at the stove. So I've transferred the stuff from my food processor into a 4 to 6 quart pot. Mine is a 4 quart, hopefully it will be large enough. And I'm gonna add the other ingredients. Got a little bit of salt, a lot of sugar, but we're making a glaze. We're making basically a jam sort of consistency, a loose jam consistency. So a lot of sugar and some apple cider vinegar. And we're gonna bring this up to a boil. She says over medium heat. So over medium heat, we're gonna bring this up to a boil. I'm gonna give this a little stir, and we're gonna cook it to a medium, at a medium simmer. So not a bare simmer, but sort of a medium simmer. We'll see. And while it is simmering, we're going to skim as much of the foam that comes up off, because that will give you a clearer color. It won't be as cloudy. That's what she says. So I've got a just the bowl I had my onions in and a spoon to skim any of the foam from around the edges as it boils. But this is gonna take a little while. So, one other thing I did wanna say, I think I forgot to say, my jalapenos had been seeded and stemmed. So I just cut the stems off, cut them down the middle, and then used a regular spoon to scoop out the seeds. I put rubber gloves on when I do that because I don't like my hands to make myself hurt later. So that's a tip. But yeah, we're just gonna wait for this to come up to boil, and it's gonna boil for about 30 minutes. That'll probably be sort of a fast forward thing here. I'm gonna clean up a little bit while we wait. All right, so I turned it up a little bit just to get it boiling a little faster, but as soon as it started simmering a little, I turned it back down to medium. And That took about, I don't know, 10 minutes just to come to a boil. But now you can see we have some foam here that I'm going to try to skim off, just so we have a nicer finished product. It will taste just fine if you leave the foam in there, but you know, it'll look prettier if you take the foam out. I stirred it a little bit before it came to a boil, but once it looked like it was starting to boil, I didn't stir it because you'll stir this stuff back in. I feel like I'm getting a bunch of pieces out of it while I'm doing this, but oh well. All right. I'm going to stir it a little bit at this point just to make sure that it's not sticking and that it's sort of evenly cooking, but not too aggressively. There we go. And I'm going to call this a medium simmer. It'll come back up as soon as, you know, in just a second. And we're going to set a timer for 30 minutes, at which point we're going to test to see whether it is the right consistency. To do that, I have a plate, a small plate in the refrigerator, because you put a little bit on a chilled plate and chill it for about 5 minutes and see how it looks. So we're gonna go about 30 minutes and then we'll be back to test it. I'm gonna skim the foam as often as I can, sort of as I'm thinking about it. I'll come back and see if there's foam to skim. And that's it. We'll be back in about 30 minutes. So it's been about 30 minutes, maybe a little bit more. My lighting guy had some work to do. I've got my chilled plate from the refrigerator and I'm going to just put some on here and put it in the refrigerator for 5 minutes. Okay, so this is our stuff and it is pretty runny. I would say that's like heavy cream, so we need to cook it longer. I'm gonna go for another, I don't know, 10 minutes and then we'll check it again. So we're gonna taste this and wash it off and put it back in the refrigerator so we can try it again. I've turned this off now because I think this is done. This is the bit that I did after another 10 minutes and it doesn't really run all that much. I'd say that's much slower, much more like a loose honey. So I think we're done. And I'm just gonna let this cool in the pot. I'm gonna take it off the heat and let it cool and then transfer it into, I'm gonna take out as much as I need for this time, but this is a lot more than you need for this recipe. I'm going to transfer some of it into freezer containers. You can also water bath can it, like a jam, or put it in the refrigerator for about 3 months. But I'm gonna go ahead and put it in the freezer so it'll last longer. And that's it for this part. Next, we're gonna put it on some chicken. Be right back. Our sauce is already done, our peach glaze is done, and now we're ready to cook our chicken. So the first thing we do is we toss it with some oil and some salt. So I've got just some neutral vegetable oil as usual. I'm gonna measure it as she says to. I'm sure it is not that important, but, and then just some plain kosher salt. There's no black pepper in this recipe, but there's plenty of jalapeno. So I'm just gonna toss this around, get them all sort of coated in oil and salt. And now if you see my book over there, the pan in the picture is very blackened with this sauce, and I don't want my pan to do that. So I have covered my sheet pan here with heavy duty aluminum foil. This is not something that she says to do in the recipe, but I decided I didn't want my pan to look like that, so I was going to do that. These are all kind of different sizes, but oh well, you get what you get. I'm gonna try to put these in a way that they are not touching, that they have enough room to sort of breathe, I guess. My oven is preheated at 400 degrees, and we're gonna put this in on the middle rack for 10 minutes. And then we're gonna take it out and just move it around in the middle rack for 10 more minutes. And I think we're gonna skip that whole moving it around step for video because, I mean, just kind of move the chicken around on the pan, turn it over, get another side, I guess. That's the point here. But we will see you back after these have been roasting for 20 minutes. Be right back. My chicken has been roasting at 400 for about 20 minutes. It looks kind of, you know, pale and gross. Not done yet for sure, but we're going to go ahead and toss this with the sauce, the glaze, the peach glaze that we made earlier. And I'm supposed to pour off any fat from here. There's not a whole lot. I'll probably just wipe it off with a paper towel or something because there's not a whole lot. I have the measured amount of sauce, and I measured out approximately this amount and put it in containers in my refrigerator for right now, and then I'm gonna put them in the fridge, and I got enough for 6 batches total, so that's not bad. All that was the most work, was making the glaze, but you only have to do that once and then you can use it 6 times. You can also make this with wings if you'd prefer. I would definitely stick with sort of dark meat or wings. I mean, if you prefer breasts, I'm sure those would be fine, but this doesn't seem to be coating all that well. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wipe this off. I'm gonna put the chicken legs back on the pan, and then I'm gonna pour the sauce on top. So 1 second. So I'm just gonna rearrange these on the pan. Okay, now I'm just gonna sort of pour the glaze. That was a lot on some of those. I just want to kind of make sure that I've got some glaze on all of it, because this is all we're supposed to do with this. We're going to put it back in the oven for 15 minutes. At that point, some of it should be shiny and some of it should be sort of charred. I don't know if we're going to get there in 15 minutes, but we'll see. I find that you can cook legs and thighs longer and they are still really tasty. Don't get really dry like white meat does, chicken. So anyway, back in the oven for 15 minutes, and I'll let you know what it's like after that. So this has been in the oven for another 15 minutes and it is not done. It's just still pale. Now there's more water on the pan from the chicken, but I'm gonna put it back in and I'll let you know how long it is until it's done. And I'll show you pictures when it is. Okay, so I cooked my chicken legs in the oven at 400 for another 15 or so minutes, and they still weren't, you know, getting caramelized and looking pretty. They were done. They were certainly done, but I decided to broil them. So I broiled them for like 3 or 4 minutes just to get a little bit of this color on them. And that's it. Now we're done. I'm a little more pleased with this now than I was earlier, so we'll let you know how they taste. On this episode of Cooking the Books with Heather, you watched me make the jalapeno peach chicken from Deep Run Roots. Now, it does require a food processor, probably get away with a blender, but that's pretty much a requirement for this recipe. And the hard part of this recipe is making the jalapeno peach glaze. So that process took us over an hour, and that was not including actually peeling and chopping the peaches and seeding the jalapenos and peeling and roughly chopping the ginger, which all took, some amount of time. I did more peaches than I had to, so it took longer. So it's hard to say exactly how long it took, but that process took a while. But it does make enough for about 6 batches of this recipe, so you don't have to do that every time. We do think it would be great on wings, so we'll probably do that next time. A little bit more sauce to meat ratio would be great. I didn't find it, eating it by itself, I could tell it was spicy. Eating it on the chicken, I got no spice whatsoever from it. My kids did. So I had made them a few pieces without any sauce, and they preferred that. They didn't balk too much at the stuff that had the sauce on it, but they preferred it without. So if you have any spice tolerance whatsoever, it probably won't be spicy for you, despite the fact there's a lot of jalapenos in there. I'm sure if you want to up the spice level, which my husband would prefer, you could add some spicier peppers to it, split it, or add some of these seeds into the mixture. Leave the seeds for maybe half of the jalapenos instead of seeding all of them. But those are some options. But like I said, I didn't find it spicy at all. My husband couldn't tell that it was at all spicy, but it had a great flavor. I do think I should have chopped my ginger a little bit more. I just kind of sliced it. It didn't get chopped in the blender as much, so there were a few pieces of like whole ginger in there. So learn from my mistakes. But all in all, it was great. I'm looking forward to having this on some wings and having it again. And I hope that if you think that it's something you'd like, go ahead and make it yourself and let me know what you think. If you enjoyed watching me make this, please hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and come back and watch me make something else next week.